Hey, Jimmy D and the Wolf podcast on the July 4th holiday that everybody's taken. So, an hour earlier than normal. Can you hear me, Jimmy?
I can hear you loud and clear, my friend.
Awesome. And I can hear you. All right. So, I hope everybody is doing well. And next week, we're planning on having Fedge, Jeff Boyd on.
Good.
And so we're going to promote that because he's becoming a celebrity. He's starting a podcast that he hooked up with a friend that he went to Bible school with. And this guy has got Happy Lives, I think is what he does, about 150 podcasts. He's been doing it for about 6 years. And he's got a studio. He's done like three different podcasts. Anyway, Jeff has hooked up with him and he's recorded, I think, a dozen episodes already. And what they are cataloging his life. He's saying, so because he's a deep thinker and he has thought about, in fact, he might even be listening to me. He has thought about, because we have some people on here, thought about, what would his great grandkids, look back at your family tree. How many people have been in your family tree and you have no idea what they were like, right? I mean, you look back, if you think you go back 5 generations or 6 or 10, and all those people, we don't know much about them, hardly, maybe even barely know their names. And there's probably the crazy uncle and and so Jeff's idea, and I love it. I'm thinking about it myself, just doing a catalog, doing videos about cataloging your life. I mean, not that it would be of interest to a lot of people, but your descendants would be. Of course, the way things are going, I'm not going to have any descendants unless something changes. So, but my nephews might have kids, and there'd be that crazy uncle Tim. What was he all about?
There you go.
So, I mean, I like it. I like the idea. It's intriguing, and with YouTube, you could put it on there. It'll be on there forever. Poor YouTube, they've got to continuously expand their data storage capability. Put up server farms, and because all the videos that are being uploaded and all the content's being housed on the web. I mean, somebody has to store that somewhere. That has to be stored somewhere.
Yeah, that's something you don't really think about.
So there we had a deal. One of our pieces of ground in South Dakota is right next to a substation, and they reached out to us and they wanted to get an option on some of that land, and I just realized I shouldn't talk anymore about that. Anyway, there was part of the contract was an NDA. I should have stopped myself before going any further.
All right.
Anyway, let's talk about something else. We'll have to erase that part.
Yeah. Edit that out. Since we're live, that's easy to do, right?
All right. Well, what else can we talk about?
I'm excited to hear the podcast that Jeff's doing.
Yeah. It's he's gonna send me some. He said he's done 12 already, 12 recordings, and his friend is actually interviewing him, and so having a professional person interview you would be awesome. I don't like having it light up above me. It really highlights. I've never felt that my hair was this gray before.
It's no grayer than mine, man, and I'm like 20 years younger than you. I think I have more gray than you do.
But it never looks like this gray when I look in the mirror. So because I made the ring light really high because I noticed when I was doing my lives, if I raised my eyes, that it would reflect the ring light in it. And now I can see it in it now. So I tried to make it really high so that it wouldn't show it. But Just
Yeah.
still trying to perfect, the whole live situation and
Right.
doing
You've really been digging in on that, man. That's
well, trying. Last week I did 10 Elvis songs, which I enjoyed, and I found them not difficult to learn and play, on just on
Sure.
acoustic guitar. And some of them were quite interesting. I was surprised at the chord choices, a lot of non-diatonic chords. I mean, the songwriters were at another level. They were all pro songwriters, right? I mean, Elvis didn't write a single thing. Isn't that accurate?
That's to the best of my knowledge. That's
Yeah.
correct.
I mean, that was the era back in the before the Beatles, really. My understanding, my thought process is there was the A. You can't even see my fist. You got the A, and then you had the R. Not that they're two different sides. And the A was the artist, and the R was the repertoire, and the record guy, the A&R, all-powerful person at the record label, would combine the two of them. And, you got this great artist, we got to find songs for them. Frank Sinatra, he didn't write a song, I don't believe, right? Did Frank Sinatra write a song? I don't think he wrote a single song.
If he did, it was probably My Way. That sounds like something he would have written.
Well, are you setting me up? Because we know that he didn't write that song.
You're right.
You're just setting me up. Paul Anka wrote that song, who was actually probably one of the first ones who wrote his own songs, although he started as a songwriter, then later on started singing him. But yeah, so Elvis, those songs, interesting songs. I mean, there's some really fun, like It's Now or Never. I think that might have been one of my favorite ones that I sang of the 10, and Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear. I like that one too. Let's talk about, that's a little bit of S&M, tie a chain around my neck and lead me anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just stating it. I mean, by modern terms.
I like the early stuff, man. The bluesy stuff.
Like All Shook Up and
yeah.
Well, what's a Mama? What was the first one that he did? Mama, something about Mama. What was it?
I remember.
It was basically
Trouble.
What was it?
Trouble.
Just
really, really bluesy. If you're looking for trouble, you came to the right place. Sounds like a Muddy Waters song, man. But the early stuff is so bluesy.
Yes, it sure is. It really is. Like the one about the prison break. What's that? I can't think of it, but it's about. Come on, help me out. Elvis did it first. Cell Block.
Oh, Jailhouse Rock.
Jailhouse Rock, yeah. Jailhouse Rock.
Yeah.
I mean, that was.
Dude, he always had great guitar players too, man. That early Carl Perkins stuff it's Scotty Moore stuff is just like smoking guitar playing.
Yeah. Well, it's probably the Colonel put that together with him, and then later on, Treat Me Like a Fool, and Love Me Tender, some ballads. And then a guy said that he really liked the song Little Less Conversation, a Little More Action.
Mm-hmm.
So I dug that up, and that was I thought I was right back into the late 60s Go-Go Girl era, because that's so Go-Go Girl era.
Right.
Beat and everything about that song. And Elvis is trying to stay relevant.
He did a fine job of it, man.
Oh, he did. And he came back. He had kind of stopped performing from the 60s and focused on B-grade movies. None of them were really any good. Were any of his movies any quality, anything other than B-level? I mean, they're all
watchable. My grandma was obsessed with Elvis, and she used to have those movies on. I remember that being a little kid.
Did you think they were bad even then?
I thought they were trash, dude. Yeah. even as a little kid, before I knew anything, I was like, why are we watching this? You know what I'm saying?
Well, you also told me about George Jones. Did your grandma also love George Jones?
Yes.
And that vocal fry, that Get all that low vocal, male vocal fry.
George Jones, but you're thinking of Conway Twitty.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, Conway. Okay, Conway Twitty. Yeah, he did the vocal fry.
Yeah,
he was kind of made that part of his thing.
Yeah, that kind of shtick.
You know, I do vocal fry in a lot of my songs. I do it. It's
vocal fry. So explain. A lot of people are going to hear that and be like,
well, it's like when you millennial women do it a lot. It's a part of the vernacular, the way they speak. So when usually it's a lower tone, and you can say, you talk like this is vocal fry. So it helps you get the low tones. And I can't do it, but it's a very common thing for millennial women to do that now. It's kind of a trendy way of speaking. And when it's just a way of speaking or singing. So it's in the low. This is a vocal fry right here. I'm talking with vocal fry. So that's what that is. And when one of the vocal trainers that I took his lessons, he would say, start with vocal fry, just practice doing your going up and down and go, it was a great way to warm up. It sounds really goofy, but start with vocal fry and then go up as high as you can. Anyway, most people, we've lost everybody now. Yeah, Conway Twitty was the vocal fry guy. Yeah, I got it bad. He was I got it wrong, I should say. He was just as big as George Jones, or maybe bigger.
In his own way, I think. George Jones's voice changed a lot. When you listen to early George Jones and then listen to later, like what we all remember him as, he sounded like a completely different person.
Now, between the two of them, because I do get those early guys confused, one of them started out kind of in rock and roll, doing an Elvis thing. Was that Conway Twitty? That was Conway Twitty.
I think so.
Yeah, Conway Twitty started being kind of in the rock and roll era, and then he moved into country.
Yeah, then he figured out how to make women fall in love with him.
What were some? Oh, we got some comments, so I got to pay attention. What were some of Conway Twitty's biggest hits?
Hello, darling.
Hey, Steve. Hey. Hello, darling. That was Conway Twitty? I thought that was George.
I think it was Conway Twitty.
Okay, I don't. Okay, I believe you're right, because you had the mom who was a fan. So if I had my phone, I'm using my phone as a camera, so I can't pull it up. Otherwise, I'd pull up. But tight fitting jeans. What do you mean, Steve? What does that refer to? You mean that's how Elvis became famous, or that was what makes people use vocal fry? It could be either. It could go either way. I don't know.
Yeah. Conway Twitty.
Millennials are a tricky bunch, Jeff says. Looking forward to having you on, Jeff. I don't know if you were on here, but I did announce that we're going to promote it for the next week. Conway song. Oh, tight fitting jeans. Conway song. Oh, was that a song? Okay. I don't even know that song. Okay, I got you. Thank you, Steve. So
yeah, millennials are. What was Jeff's comment?
You said a tricky bunch. See, leave it to Jeff to make a non-negative bashing phrase. I mean, he would make it in such a positive way, but yet acknowledge what we were talking about. Just a very, very diplomatic. Jeff is very, very good.
Well, we were talking about that earlier. Like when you were younger, people coming to the house and you going to visit stuff all the time.
Right. Jeff, I called Jeff today and had a long conversation, and I called you about it as well, because when I was a kid, I remember visiting. It was a thing. It was like capital V, visiting. And you would go visit people and they would come visit you. And you'd usually call them and say, "Hey, are you free? We'll come visit." And you knew their schedules. You knew that church was Wednesday night. So it usually wasn't a Wednesday. So it was a weekday, usually a Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, I think. Probably not a Friday. And there were couples that we would go visit. Joe and Donna, we'd go visit them. They had 5 girls, and we'd go visit them. And my mom would always, about 8:00, she'd pull out the coffee and those little wafers, Neapolitan wafers that are all multicolored. They're like serrated, and you could break them. And she'd put them on their little dishes, maybe some ice cream on there, and everyone would be served. And us kids would be off running off doing whatever. And that is not a thing today. People aren't in each other's homes. It just doesn't happen. And you said, I asked you about it, and you said that when you were a kid, the same thing. Lots of visiting.
Yeah, we were always visiting people and having visitors over. I can't recall exactly who, because we were kids and they were like, "What are you doing inside? It's not raining. Get out." But I know there were people that weren't my parents.
Oh, Steve says same. When you were a kid, you went, Steve, you went visiting. Visiting was a thing, I think is what he's saying. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Steve's dad and my father were very good friends. I mean, they visited each other all the time. They have euchre games and things like that, kind of like what you're talking about. It's funny that, like, my father, for all of his idiosyncrasies and his personality, I could have showed up at his house anytime. If it was 1 a.m. and I woke him up, when he got it, he would make coffee immediately, no matter what time it was. Yeah, never being allowed indoors. Exactly.
Try that. Try that with your kids. Say, "Hey, what are you doing inside? Stop playing video games."
They'll probably stage a coup on me. Kids are pretty smart now. I'm gonna throw this regime.
Oh, Evelyn, thank you for joining us. Boy, that's a beautiful profile photo with a heart. Very romantic. I love that. Yeah, and I don't know, I think right now our country, for whatever politics one holds, we are divided. I mean, politically, and each side hates the other side and don't even think they're human beings. And, they always, what they say about a divided house. Mm-hmm. Oh, Steve says, "Oh Lord, they'd act like we were killing them if we kicked them out of the house," I think is what he's referring to. I'd like you to see you try it. Just say, "Jimmy, tell Memphis and Marshall and Madeline, say, this is the way I was raised, and I'm going to start doing this because I think I turned out really well. So I'm going to do the same thing to you."
I know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to say, "Can I take my phone?" And if they can take the phone, they're not going to care. They're just going to do the same thing on the other side of the wall. I got to take the phone from them too. Be like, "Go outside
without a phone
and leave your phone here."
I mean, I don't like to bash generations. Millennials, Generation Z, and even the new one that is like first 5 years is a new one. I don't remember what it's called. I don't even has a name yet. But Zers are Madeline. Well, all 3 of your kids would be Generation Zers. But babies born now are not Generation Z. That's another generation that hasn't even been named yet. Give them spoons, Steve says. Or unless you know the name. Maybe they've named it. I don't know the name for the new one.
Out of letters. They got to come up with a new letter to the name next.
Yeah, Z. There's no letter after Z. Unless it's Generation A.
Start all over again.
Mom's good spoons in a dirt pile. Absolutely. Keep yourself busy doing that, you know. So, well, when I was a kid, I mean, playing was something that you try to snuck in between your workload. I mean, you know, and you're older than you, but on the farm, we were people had kids so that you could had a captive workforce, and
Couldn't escape.
yeah, and I was driving a tractor before I started first grade. And I think about that. I mean, what if I'd fallen off? I could have maimed my arms. I mean, what, you know, I thank God that I still have all my fingers and I can play the guitar. You know, I didn't lose anything. You know, there were people, well, a generation before that, a lot of the farmers were missing pieces of their fingers because they would get it caught in corn pickers was the common thing because the corn picker would always plug up and there weren't any guards, you know, protective guards that they put on. And so they'd reach in there and then it'd take off a finger. There's lots of farmers that were missing limbs, some of them missing an arm or a hand, you know, from the wrist up missing. And then farm equipment got safer, but it wasn't that safe when I was running it. I mean, there was a power takeoff that was turning there and I could have easily gotten caught into that, you know, as a kid, but I guess I was smart enough to know that I don't want to get in that and I want to stay away from that. So,
lucky, probably.
Lucky. My dad, either it was my dad or his buddy, was baling hay in the ditches and standing there with his coveralls, and it caught the pant leg caught on that power turnoff, a PTO, and it pulled his coveralls right off of him, and he's standing there in his underwear.
Wow.
And another one. Glad Jim is so smart. Well, I don't know about that, but thank you, Jeff. I can imagine your dad getting out there before you were in first grade. Absolutely, Terry. You knew my dad. You knew my dad, yeah. And there was another, I think Ivan. Terry knows Ivan. Ivan, I think it was Ivan that my dad's closest friend and hunting buddy that was standing there in his underwear when the power takeoff took his clothes, his overalls or his coveralls off. It was either my dad or Ivan. I don't remember which. And then the other one literally had their pants caught in it, but it was a small tractor and it stalled the tractor and it was at an idle and it stalled the tractor. So both of them had those instances and it's been some years and can't sort out which one had which, but you know, it could have been much worse. My dad would just laugh and giggle, you know, that's why they called him Lucky, you know, because he had a lot of close calls that
near misses.
Yeah, a lot of them. Well, the worst one was staying away from the PTO, Jeff says. Yes, stay away from the PTO. The worst one was, and I thank God that I was there, he would always, you know, he was big in the scrap. He would get scrap metal and scrap, and toward the end there, he would yeah, really big on the visiting scheme. Absolutely, Terry. I mean, I feel that is missing in today's society. I mean, if the visiting was a thing again, we'd be better for it. That's just my personal opinion. Call me an old man, but stuck in my ways. But
well, how many personalities did you learn about from those visits when you were a child?
Sure.
And just interactions and how to deal with different.
Sure, absolutely. A lot. I come to think of it. Yeah, I remember different kids and some kids were weird or, you know, you learned how to adapt. Right. I never thought about that till just now. But the worst accident my dad had was when he was probably over 60 and he had an old skid steer that he would, he was tearing stuff apart and cutting it for scrap. And he had that cutting torch and he was always cutting stuff and cut it into smaller pieces and taking it up for junk metal and cleaned up the farm because we had a lot of junk stuff. And he had that skid steer up in the air and he was cutting stuff and he wanted to lower the forks so that the engine was off and you use the foot pedals to do that. And he was facing the other way. How about pulling grain carts down the highway? Terry knows. My dad would pull like 5 grain carts tied one behind the other out behind his pickup. Nobody would do that. Nobody else would do like except 2. My dad would pull 5.
That's great.
Crazy. Filled with grain. Crazy. Anyway, and so he wanted to lower the front fork, which you can do when the power is off and the gravity will make it turn. And he grabbed that foot pedal from the ground and didn't factor in the fact that now he's facing the other way and it's the opposite foot pedal. And he grabbed the one that did the lowering of the boom, and he hit that thing, and that came down like that. Oh. And he was caught across his head, across his neck like this, and he was trapped there. And the right part, let's see, whichever side of his body was free, would have been his left pocket, and he had a walkie-talkie there. And he was able to pull that walkie-talkie out. If it would have been in this pocket, he wouldn't have been able to, but it was on this pocket, and just the angle that he was at, he was able to pull that walkie-talkie out. And he's laying like this because he's trapped there. He pulls that walkie-talkie out, and he's able to trick the trigger, and he says, and I was in my office there, and I happened to have the walkie-talkie on. I would often turn it off because my employees would be talking, and I didn't want to hear, they would talk nonsense, and I got tired of hearing what they were saying. I had it on that day, and he calls me, and the urgency in his voice, I could tell that there was something very, very wrong. And he said, "Tim, come help me. I'm trapped." I'm like, "Where are you?" "I don't know. The farm is pretty big." And I came out there, and he's trapped. And the nurses told him he's lucky to be alive. And he could have paralyzed him. There's so many things that could have happened. Somehow his skull was strong enough to hold that up, and he survived that. And the nurses were amazed that he was walking and able to survive. And anyway, could have killed him, no doubt about it. And it probably, if he wasn't lucky, he was fortunate. It wasn't his time, and I was able to come out there and get in, climb in, start it up and raise it up. And he kind of stands up. He's kind of dazed, And
I bet you were freaking out.
Oh, I was absolutely freaking out. And, Dad's pickup finally broke into at the shop. Jeff, absolutely.
Broke into?
He would drive old pickups, and he had a pickup, and I think it got up on the lift. They were changing the oil, whatever, and it literally broke in two. And it was like this. I mean, this was the middle of the pickup, the front wheels here and the other back wheels here, and it was shaped like that because it broke into on the lift. He was definitely a man of 9 lives. And like a year or two after that, he had an accident where we had a chop saw, and it was sitting on a barrel, and he was in a hurry to change the blade, and he didn't unplug it. And he got his Allen wrench out, and he went to crank on it, and he went to grab it, and it started to fall, and he grabbed it, and he hit the trigger, and that Allen wrench was on that thing, and it got spun around and put right here, sticking into his cheek. And he wasn't wearing safety glasses, of course. And he goes into the house, and he pulls it out, and he comes into the house, and he's dazed again, and I got to take him to the hospital again. And I'm like, Dad.
Wow.
And because of that one, I think it dislocated something in his eye, and he could never see anything but shadows out of that eye again for the rest of his life, because it was so close to his eye, and it dislodged the cornea. I'm not sure what he was there for an oil change. Yeah, that's what it was. He was a man of 9 lives. He was a unique person, no doubt about it. Steve knew him, or Terry knew him. Sorry. Mixing up my commentators. Terry knew him because I think Terry would buy sunflowers from him. Terry ran the local sunflower business. So yeah, this is my dad. He was a character. They used to call him Lucky because he would he was a bit of a hazard. Oh, they used to call him there was another name for it. They had another nickname for him. They called him I can't even think of it, but he would come back when we had the trucks with the elevator. You'd raise them up, and he'd come in super fast, full of grain, and he'd come in on and slam his brakes on the scale, which really isn't good for the scale. And then the guy would come out, would weigh him and come out, and they usually come and help you. Some people stay in the truck. They don't even, he was out there and already lifting the end gate and doing all that, and they'd come out. And then as soon as it got empty, he'd jump in the truck and take off with the elevator, with the hoist still high in the air. And because he didn't have time, because it takes time for that hoist to come down. It's kind of slow. It's hydraulic. He wasn't going to wait for that. And so he's driving down the highway with that bed up, slowly coming down, because he had no time to wait for that, and would never stop and get his ticket. He'd get all his tickets at the end of the time. He was always in such a hurry. And well, he got a lot done all by himself. I mean, he farmed as many acres by himself as probably the average person would need 2 or 3 people. Part of his efficiency was he had 5 grain trailers all tagged in together. Yeah, and Ivan, his buddy, who also went to the same church that Terry and I went to, and Ivan was my dad's closest friend for all of his life, and they'd go hunting, and boy, his stories. And of course, Ivan was great at telling the stories, and Ivan would tell the stories, and my dad would just laugh and giggle, and some crazy stories. Yeah, so yeah, I miss him. I still miss him. His birthday's tomorrow. Would have been his birthday, July 6th. So maybe it's appropriate that we are spending some time talking about him. You know, he was a one of a kind person. So
I wish I could have met him.
Yeah, you would have enjoyed him. Yeah, a lot of people liked him. He had a lot of liked to laugh a lot. So archiving his life, good idea, Jeff. I don't know if you were on when we were talking about this. I was talking about your idea of your archiving your life, and I'm intrigued by that. And I'm thinking about maybe doing that myself. Unfortunately for me, I don't have any descendants as of yet. You know, that could change. But still, my dad would have been 92 tomorrow. So if he'd still be alive. So thanks for asking, Terry. Yeah. Yeah, I miss him, but I especially miss him on days like that, like Father's Day and his birthday and stuff. And but I have stories. Absolutely, Jeff. I have stories. Steve says Jimmy's dad was a good one too. So I've heard some of your stories about your dad.
Oh yeah, he could go. He was a really funny guy. He could go just as probably more than any human being I've ever met in my entire life. My father could go really, really far on one side of the spectrum and be the nicest, sweetest, funniest person you've ever met, and then get mad about something, and it would go just as far the other direction. And you're going, is this the same person? You know what I mean? It's just like he had some capacity. I'll say that for sure. But same thing. I miss him every day. I miss him constantly.
So how many kids did your father have total?
Well, 4. There's 4 of us: Tony, Ralph, Becky, and myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Steve says best storyteller ever.
Yeah, he had some good ones, and old stories. And I feel really, really fortunate because, like the thing that, yeah, maybe it makes a lot of sense. I feel fortunate because, like what we're talking about, archiving your life. One of the things that I loved most about my father is that he had those stories and of his grandpa and there was lots of things documented about people in the family through the years. There's a violin that's been in the family for like 400 years, and it's documented. Every person that's owned this.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And there's lots of old, like there's an old painting, an old silver flake painting that's been in the family for many, many generations. And he was very he was a very sentimental guy. You know, if you gave him something, he was a hard guy. You know what I mean? My dad was a hard dude because he was like Marine Corps guy and stuff. But he was very sentimental, and I really didn't have to guess very much about where I was coming from. You know, that's one thing I'm grateful for, of like the roots, that he was a deeply rooted person, you know. All that being said, I mean, we all have our idiosyncrasies, but I miss him terribly.
Now, did he spend his entire life in Madison, Indiana?
On and off, other than his military stuff.
Yeah, other than the military thing.
Yeah, he was born in an old stone house. There's argument that this is the oldest standing structure in the state of Indiana, and it's on the river a mile from Eagle Hollow Road, and there's no roof on it. There hasn't been a roof on it for like 20 years, and it's still standing. There's these massive pieces of limestone. And my father was born in that house in 1937 during the flood of 37, which is the biggest flood that Madison's ever had on record. He was born in that house with people literally scooping buckets of water out of the house during his birth. I heard that story many times as I was coming up. So he kind of got off to a little bit of a rough start, and it just got rougher from there.
Who owns that property?
There was a local guy that D. Bennett, when he passed, he left it to his nephew. And I had talked to D about acquiring it before, and it's a fascinating problem. We'll have to go look at it next time.
Yeah. I mean, we should. I think you should acquire that if he's willing to sell it to you.
Awesome. It was in the family for a long time, and it's a fascinating property because it's on a really steep hill. And when you look at it, you look at these limestones, and it's one of those things where you just go, how'd
they get that?
You know what I mean? And nobody knows. And it is pretty neat, though. And they had a farm there that was in the family for years.
Steve's got a comment here, Jimmy. He says he's heard that story.
Yeah.
And it's true. And also, Shannon has a stone from that house, he said.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we should look at seeing if we can acquire that for you anyway. But
it's a fascinating place, man. It really is.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. You know, those were characters. I mean, our dads. I mean, I don't know. Was those generations allowed you to be more of a character, or it's just interesting that?
Well, you know, I read this somewhere the other day, and I'm not saying that I agree with it or that I don't agree with it. It just stopped me in my tracks when I read it. That there was a quote that somebody put somewhere. I don't remember where I saw it, but I saw somewhere that it said, "Don't handicap your children by giving them an easy life." And I stopped and was like, you know what? I'm sure your childhood I'm sure it was great, but it wasn't easy. Mine was very much the same way. You know, I mean, it wasn't easy. I had to work, and you had to work. And I thought about, like, you know, am I making things too easy for my kids? Probably so.
I think it's a tough thing to do. You know, a tough line to walk.
Sure.
You know, I've heard that from other people that, you know, as parents, you know, I've got this burden of these kids. Burden, I mean, obligation in some sense, I think.
Yeah.
So,
well,
you want to do your best, and there's no manual. I've heard it said there's no instruction manual.
Or it could be Maybe I was right when I was a little kid. My parents.
Oh, thank you, Terry. Terry says he's heard stories and experiences of me that could make me a character. Well, I'd be happy to be considered that. Maybe I learned from my father. I'm sorry, Jimmy. Go ahead.
No, it's you're good.
You were saying you had a point.
Well, not really. I was just saying that, you know, sometimes I think that I'm not hard enough on my kids, and that my parents had this grand plan of they knew what they were doing, and then it's like, I don't think that was the case. I just think I love my kids more than they love their kids.
Sure. Well, you know, it's a societal thing. I mean, and I've used this example a number of times that I heard an author speak about it. She was trying to sell her book on NPR, but it resonates with me. I mean, if you think about my mom was considered her title was housekeeper, or no, what's the term I'm looking for?
Housewife.
Housewife, yeah, not housekeeper, housewife. Thank you. And the focus was on keeping the house, and you know, all the commercials on TV were about, you know, making the shirts whiter and making the furniture pledge, you know, to make the furniture shine and all of those sort of things. And kids were kind of afterthought. Get outside. Why are you inside? Your comment was perfect. Get outside. Don't be under my foot. I mean, so to speak. And that changed somewhere 80s, 90s. And suddenly the title for the woman, well, a lot of women had to work or started working where they had to or wanted to, or whichever way you want to put it. I mean, not getting into that, but a lot of women were working. But if a woman was staying at home, she was no longer called a housewife. She was called a stay-at-home mom. And the focus was radically different. Now it was about the kids, and the house was secondary. And I think those titles are indicative of how society viewed that. And there was a whole generation of kids that were raised, you know, with participation trophies and that sort of thing. And I think they're easing back on that. But it just was a societal change. And I wonder, I mean, sociologists have probably write PhD booklets on what changed that, you know. But my generation, there was, you know, you were pretty much left to your own, and nobody, and I enjoyed that. You know, I was independent. As long as I didn't get in trouble and didn't break anything, I was okay. Jeff says, my childhood was not much fun, yet I'm thankful for it. It makes my life quite enjoyable by comparison. Yeah, I've heard you've talked to you a lot about your life, Jeff. And
Jeff, I think your dad and my dad really were related to each other.
Thank you, Terry. Telling your friend about my experiences. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm living the dream here in Nashville. I mean, I truly am. I'm write songs, and I'm in my studio, and able to do a podcast with my buddy Jimmy, and it's just truly enjoying my life. So, well, we've been going for past our normal time. Jimmy, you have any last words of?
I enjoyed talking about our dads, man.
Yeah. It's was a good unexpected, but I think just free flowing it has been a good thing today. And next week we're going to have Fedge on. We're going to have Fedge, and we're going to hear his stream of consciousness thoughts. And that one will probably go 2 hours, because when Fedge is on, they normally go longer.
Yeah,
Tune in, and we'll probably do it Monday at our normal time, right? This one was early. This one was an hour early. So we'll plan on it. Unless we have to change it, we'll let everyone know. But we're planning on doing it at 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So
sounds good, my man.
All right.
Thank you for watching.
Everybody have a great week.
Peace.
See ya.